Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're just about to start, and when Stephen walks in through the door, I'm sure he'll close it. He's actually turned around. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Cabinet meeting, Haringey Council, 11th of September. There are a couple of things that I'm going to raise, but first and foremost, I'll do the statutory notice. Please note that this meeting may be filmed or recorded by the Council for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's internet site or by anyone attending the meeting using any communication method. Although we ask members of the public recording, filming or reporting on the meeting not to include the public seating areas, members of the public attending this meeting should be aware that we cannot guarantee that they will not be filmed or recorded by others attending the meeting as well. Members of the public participating in the meeting, for example, making deputations, asking questions or making oral protests, should be aware that they are likely to be filmed, recorded or reported upon. By entering this meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and those sound recordings. The chair of the meeting, that's me, has the sole discretion to terminate or suspend filming or recording if, in my opinion, continuation of the filming, recording or reporting would disrupt or prejudice the proceedings, infringe the rights of any individual or may lead to the breach of a legal obligation by the Council. Okay, that's that. Item number 2 is apologies for absence.
Chair, we have apologies for absence from Councillor Hearn.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any additional urgent business?
Chair, there are no items of urgent business.
Okay, there's a notice to or intention to conduct business in private.
There have been no representations received at the agenda publication stage in relation to the exempt items on the agenda.
Okay, I'm going to add an item in the middle before we get to declarations of interest. What I want to do with this meeting is to vary the agenda. So I'll take item number 12, which is the designation of Finsbury Park and Stroud Green Neighbourhood Area Forum, immediately after item number 8 or item number 7, whichever is most relevant, and before the budget monitoring report. Okay, so that's the decision to vary the agenda. Is that okay? Great, lovely, thank you. Any declarations of interest? Okay, silence implies no, that's excellent. Matters referred to Cabinet by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And apparently there are no matters to report from Overview and Scrutiny yet. Okay, next one, minutes. Minutes are on pages 1 to 20 of your report. Can I ask whether we are happy to confirm the minutes as a correct record of the meeting held on the 14th of August? Lovely, thank you very much. That is agreed. There were 2 late requests for deputations, and unfortunately, I'm sorry to say that they were sufficiently late that it was deemed inappropriate to take them. But I have got a letter from one of the deputies, which I will address by the time we get to the particular report that it was asking questions upon. And so, having done the minutes and having done the deputation, now I'm going to vary the agenda. We're going to take item number 12, which is the designation of Finsbury Park Area Forum. Can I ask if anybody needs to access this electronically, that they take the opportunity to do so on the Council's website, because it is there. We will begin our consideration of that item now. The Council welcomes neighbourhood planning and local communities taking a lead in shaping the future of their local area. The Finsbury Park and Stroud Green Neighbourhood Forum will be the 3rd such forum designated in Haringey. following on from those in Highgate and Crouch End. However, this is a forum that straddles the boundaries of 3 local authorities, and the forum will have a key role in promoting cross-borough working and addressing cross-borough issues. The Council is committed to working with the forum and our neighbouring councils to facilitate the bringing forward of a neighbourhood plan and to ensure our local people can achieve their ambitions for their neighbourhood. I recognise that the working group will be disappointed that Haringey Council is recommending adoption of a neighbourhood area which excludes the area of the park itself. The reasoning behind this is because the neighbourhood area proposed excludes neighbourhoods that join some boundaries of the park, and it's our belief that this would exclude some communities from making decisions about the park. I think it's one of those things that's very important that all residents feel that the park is their park, and it is a Grade 2 designated park. I'd like, if possible, to move to 4.4 in the pack, which is page 71, where we talk about the particular reasoning behind our decision not to include the park in the neighbourhood area forum. It's a regional park with more than just local significance. Its future is considered important to many neighbourhoods within the 3 boroughs and further afield. There is therefore concern that other neighbourhoods within the vicinity of the park would lose influence and sway over the future of the park, and it will not be the opportunity for consultation on issues that may affect them. The fact is that neighbourhood forums cannot overlap, and were a similar neighbourhood forum for South Haringey wished to constitute itself and again have a view on what should happen within the park. They would not be able to do so if this particular neighbourhood forum, which is Stroud Green and Finsbury Park, had the park within its boundaries. Right, so this is a decision which the council has taken, which it has the discretion to do so, and this is from guidance within the localism?
Yep, Localism Act.
Within the Localism Act, sections 61G and 61I. And within that guidance, it gives the council the discretion to decide what the most appropriate neighbourhood area is for a neighbourhood forum, and we've taken that discretion and we've made this decision here. To avoid any confusion, I'd be grateful if people can have a look on page 235 at the recommendations, which are on page... it's not on page that, it's my notes here. There we go, it says Finsbury Park, this note here. So the recommendations which are on page 70, they refer to Appendix 9. Appendix 9 is actually the one which is on page 235 and marked as Appendix 3. That's a typo. But for people to be clear what we're talking about, where it says Appendix 9, it means Appendix 3. It's on page 235. Okay. Can I ask whether or not any members of the Cabinet have any questions for this? Okay. Can I ask whether there are any councillors who have any questions from this? Okay, I'll take them in the order that I saw them. I saw Councillor Calverwell first and then Councillor Morris. If you can just come up and take a seat, please.
As far as I'm aware, the surrounding councils have approved of the forum, including Finsbury Park. And so when I read this, I was quite surprised. And now listening to you, you're saying that they are a bit dubious on this. Am I correct in assuming that? The surrounding councils have not given their permission for the Finsbury Park Forum and Stroud Green for the park to be included. Is that correct? No?
I'll be honest, I'm not aware, but I will talk to officers about this. Emma?
Okay. Oh, sorry.
I'm not actually aware of the dates that their meetings were actually happening, but it's true that in their reports they won't have made comment on our proposal to change the boundary, because the way that it works within the law is it's only Haringey that can make a decision on the boundary that is within Haringey, so it's entirely right that it would only be within the Haringey report that this change was actually set out.
Well, that's strange, because I've been in contact with both the surrounding boroughs, Hackney and Islington, and Islington, as I understand it, have agreed to our proposal of keeping the forum within the Stroud Green, but Hackney were going to make a decision presently. So I haven't heard contrary to that. So the question is, our neighbourhood Labour councils have either approved the planned forum or about to do so. So if Finsbury Park is excluded from the area plan, then I feel, what message does that send to our fellow Labour councillors about cross-border cooperation? And I feel that's the most important issue here, because we have spoken to them, the cross-border cooperation in connection with the park, because both the Islington and Haringey feel that Finsbury Park is their park. And are you... Oh, yeah, carry on. That's fine.
As you're aware, there's going to be a meeting of MPs and council leaders and environment leads and local council laws on a number of issues surrounding Finsbury Park and what we as a council might wish to do with regards to events in Finsbury Park. That's a meeting that's coming up. What we have here is a proposal for an area forum, and as was pointed out, it is the gift of each individual council to design the boundary of the area forum within their borough as for which they can determine which would give the best governance of the forum and the best governance overall for the borough. It is the decision that this council has made that because Finsbury Park is such a significant park and there are people who are not just within the forum area but live around other areas of the park that might wish to have a view on that, the best way that is possible for all of those interested parties to have influence on what happens within the park is to take the park out of the designation for this particular area forum. That's been the view that we feel will get the best opportunities for governance for the park.
So if I suggest, just very quickly, if I suggest that we increase the area to include these, would that be a satisfactory answer?
No, we've already decided. No, I'm sorry, you haven't heard what we said on here, right? The area, the forum areas cannot overlap. Okay, if the park is in Stroud Green and Finsbury Park area forum, were there to be a South Haringey area forum, the park could not be within that designation. So it would give all of the influence for what happens in the park to people who are, you know, with respect, living in different boroughs. It's the best way that this council believes that it can give people, residents, influence over what happens in the park is to keep it outside the boundaries of this area forum. Okay. Councillor Morris.
Thank you. I've got 3 questions. The working group that drew up the boundaries based the consultation on over 1,000 responses. The proposal to remove Finsbury Park is based on just 5 or 6 objections from the council's own smaller consultation with only 18 responses. How does the council justify that there's actually public support for removing the park from the area?
I'm sorry. Let me deal with that specifically. That's not the decision to remove the park from the area forum area is not based on those 5 or so, or however many responses. It's based on what the council considers will give the most amount of residents, the most amount of influence on what goes on in the park.
Okay, thank you. As you're aware from the area forums, are entitled to 25% of SIL money collected to be spent on projects in the forum. By removing Finsbury Park from the forum area, potential investment in the park will be lost. And has the council considered that?
Emma?
The money can still be requested to be used on projects within Finsbury Park, whether the area is included in it or not.
Thank you. And I don't need to ask a further question. Thank you.
Okay, we'll store that one up for later then, Councillor. Okay. What I'm going to ask now, if we're okay, all the questions have been asked, we can turn to page 70 and to the recommendations that are at paragraphs 3.1 to 3.4. All right. Can I ask if Cabinet colleagues are you happy to agree these? Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to go back to the original running order of the agenda, which is budget monitoring. Councillor Berryman, I'd like you to introduce item 9 of the report. Thank you. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Chair. This is the Q1 budget monitoring report for financial year 2018-19. Haringey, like others, continues to face a lot of challenges with the budget, and these are the forecasts for the year ahead after the first quarter. And as you will see, we are forecasting an overspend around 6 million, and this is after the application of 7 million reserves from our budget resilience reserve, which was set up last year in anticipation that as we come to the end of a 3-year MTFS, the savings towards the end become harder to deliver. And this was set up, this budget resilience reserve, which was set up under the previous lead finance member, was to anticipate that we may not be able to deliver savings at the end of this period. The idea is to act early and take a realistic approach to some of the savings that were scheduled for areas like children's and adults, where councils across London and across the country face difficulty in delivering these as they currently stand. It doesn't mean we've given up on those savings. That's why we've set up a budget delivery board to try and continue to push those, of which I'll be the chair, but it just means we're taking an approach that we're going to accept that they may be hard to deliver, and so make use of the reserve that was set up for that, and then look for other ways that we can make the budget balance should we need to. Aside from that, we have overspends currently in 3 budget areas of around 6 million. They're mainly in adults and children. They relate to demand-led services, looked after children, the first response team in children's, and care packages in adult social care, again where councils around the country face issues. And then we have some other overspends in priority 3, which relate to mainly inflation pressures and some contract disputes, which we're hoping to resolve.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Berryman. Do Cabinet colleagues have any questions for the Cabinet lead on finance? Okay, thank you. Any other councillors have any questions? Councillor Morris.
Thank you. First of all, will the administration be considering the projection from paragraph 8.1 that it will only meet 33% of its savings targets when proposing new spending increases? 2, is setting up a new board an adequate response to the scale of missed savings? And 3, has the current underspend in the capital budget resulted in any missed revenue savings, especially considering 9.1 of the report, which suggests 96.5 million of the capital budget is the money not spent last year?
So taking first the 33% delivery projected, again, that's part of taking a realistic approach to savings that have kind of been rolled 1 or 2 years over, that are really just, most councils are finding hard to deliver in terms of controlling some of the spend in adults and children. So rather than anticipating 50% delivery or two-thirds delivery, we're taking the cautious approach that this is going to be hard to achieve. We're probably only, at current projections, going to get a third, and therefore we need to start looking really rigorously at other budget areas to make up the shortfall. So that's the approach there. In terms of the capital underspend, just one second.
The question was, are you going to take that into account when you're looking at proposing new spending increases, for example, the council tax reduction scheme? Yeah,
as I've said, I think at a previous meeting, I mean, the net budget of the council, 250 million thereabouts, will form all the budget discussions that go on now for the next couple of months. Everything in there will come under consideration. The council tax reduction scheme is a priority. It was in our manifesto that we were elected on, and the 1.2 million for that we consider a priority spend, and we'll have to take part. That's something we want to deliver, subject to the consultation, but we will look at every spend in the council, everything we spend money on, the whole thing, to see where we best spend our money. So yes, we will obviously take account of these overspends and think, well, what can we pledge? Which is why we went just a first step on the council tax reduction scheme, prioritising families with children who were affected. I'll just check with my officer on capital.
Chair, if I may perhaps help with that. So the most significant revenue implication of the slower than planned capital expenditure is that the cost of borrowing that we would incur during the year is less as a consequence, so there would be a revenue improvement on that. Clearly there are some impacts on some of the business cases and the delivery of the schemes, but there's nothing that we've needed to report into this paper at this time.
There was last question. Is the setting up of a new board an adequate response to the scale of missed savings?
Well, the scale of the savings, I think the budget a year ago was set with an anticipation of using reserves, which in the end wasn't necessary. You could argue perhaps this budget should have been set up with the same caution put in it, that these savings are getting harder to deliver for everyone now, in adults and children. And after Q1, we've seen that they are going to be hard to deliver, so we've just acted in possibly what should have happened at the start of the financial year, that we might need reserves until these savings can be delivered and until we've got new savings on the table.
Councillor Ibrahim.
I just, obviously following on from some of the questions that have been asked, I wanted the Cabinet Member for Finance to clarify that these are in fact cuts that we've been unable to make, because making those cuts would impact detrimentally on services, that they are not savings, we're not putting them away in the bank, they are in fact cuts, which if particularly in those vital services, would have a hugely detrimental impact on our residents.
Councillor Berman.
I thank my colleague. I appreciate the sentiment that my colleague is saying, that call it sometimes what it is. A cut is different to a saving. Across the council there have been cuts, and you might describe them as savings, but they're cuts. In terms of the precise overspends here, I wouldn't necessarily say they are one or the other. They're just a symptom of sort of 7-8 years of austerity, where you start to see overspends coming in other areas, be it the police budget, when crime rises as we cut back on youth services, be it looked after children, the stress of families living with low wages, insecure jobs, insecure housing. So it's a mix of all things. But yeah, I agree, it's not just savings, and we're not getting any money to put away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Right. Can I ask colleagues to turn to pages 21 to 22 of our pack today? There are recommendations at paragraphs 3.1 to 3.8. Are we happy to agree these? Lovely. Thank you very much. Next item is item number 10, which is a review of our plans to establish a youth zone in Haringey. Can I ask Councillor Blake whether he's able to introduce his report, please? Councillor Blake.
Thank you. You've had the report, which basically details things. I'm not going to run through this in a great deal of detail, but the key items I want to put you to, or direct you towards are the recommendations, and essentially that we will rescind the previous decisions in terms of taking a youth zone forward in Haringey. This is done very much on the basis in terms of our developing approach in the borough in terms of youth services and particularly with regards to the agenda around vulnerable children and violent crime and its impact on children. We see, in terms of how we take that forward in Haringey, very much being a collaboration with the local community, which I think is reflected in this paper, and very much in terms of our local voluntary sector partners. I said it last week at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Clearly, this administration has a commitment in terms of youth services. We want to, through this very kind of difficult budget process, which Councillor Berryman has positioned, Councillor Berryman has outlined, we want to find additional resources in terms of the next financial year to invest in our youth services. But we just believe that this process in terms of the youth zone would actually, wouldn't in terms of the context where we're in, and I think critically building that partnership with the local voluntary sector, I think that the youth zone would have been hugely detrimental in terms of that partnership with the local voluntary sector. And there are also the practicalities, I think, in terms of its location, that we could have ended up with a very expensive youth centre which was only meeting the needs of a small percentage of the young people in Haringey, because I think we're all kind of clearly aware, and I think particularly local members will be particularly aware of the issues in the borough around safety and around travel of young people, and certainly members in Tottenham and elsewhere in the borough were telling me that they had grave doubts whether young people would actually travel to a single site facility within my ward, actually, Woodside, next to within the Woodside High site, that isn't the most advantageous in terms of transport connections. So that's really an overview, very kind of quick overview in terms of the reasons behind the decisions that are in this paper. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay. Can I ask Cabinet colleagues if they've got any questions for Councillor Blake? Councillor Ajay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Blake. Are you able to... It doesn't... At 8.4.2 paragraph, it says... talked about impact assessment. Any idea when you are likely to, or officers are likely to come back with an alternative proposal to this scheme? And also, has any thought been given to a different location, given that the original site was an MOL? Thank you.
I think at this point it's pretty clear that we don't want to carry forward with the youth zone proposal. We have to assess our own strategy in terms of youth services moving forward, but also within the context with regards to what our approach is going to be, particularly around young people, safety and violent crime. I've highlighted this at a number of meetings with the voluntary sector and elsewhere. There are kind of three strategies that we're developing at the moment. within community safety and children's, one around vulnerable children and our approach to vulnerable children, and I think becoming far more effective in terms of our early intervention. Two, we need to go back in terms of our whole approach around youth services within this context and the decision that we've taken or we're about to take around progressing with the youth zone. And then thirdly, officers and community safety have been working on a specific violent reduction strategy. So again, I very much see the three kind of moving forward together. We've had a really useful piece of research from the Godwin Lawson Foundation, which we had a big discussion at full council a few months ago. We're moving forward with that, and we're going to be further discussions with officers and myself and representatives there in terms of youth engagement and consultation in terms of how we move forward. So it's early days, but I don't see the youth zone certainly being part of how we move things forward. I'd add one caveat to that, and I think that's crucial because I think it's also part of the reasoning why we haven't moved forward with this. We know that on side are developing youth zones in 4 other boroughs. They've never developed in London, so there's quite clearly they don't have an evidence base in London. Obviously, we'll see what happens within those other boroughs, but clearly we're trying to put our strategy together and to move that forward with our local voluntary sector partners and with other statutory sector partners and the community, quite crucially. I think in terms of the Godwin Lawson Foundation report, we need to be listening to our young people, and I think within that, families, communities, parents as well.
Okay, Councillor Berryman.
Thank you, Chair. Prior to the summer, the Council took a decision to put some extra money into the summer programme for the youth. Do you have any feedback on that yet and how that would feed into your plans going forward?
Thanks, Councillor Berryman. We've had some early anecdotal feedback. The Borough Commander in my last briefing did actually mention that, and there was some good feedback on the ground. I know that members have seen what was happening at our local sports centres and local youth clubs. I'm absolutely proud that we worked with officers, maybe had to cajole officers a bit in terms of, finding those extra resources. But I think it's absolutely worthwhile because Touchwood and you and I and other members, in the room will know going around talking to local youth projects. We've had a quiet summer in Haringey, and I think that's always something to celebrate. So, we're waiting for an officer's report on that. That I think is coming through at the end of the month. We'll have internal meetings around that. There are further challenges. I met with the chair of Alexandra Pally. I'd love to see a subsidised offer at the Palace for our local young people around ice skating, etc. We know with Fusion is not a private members fitness gym. It's not Pure Gym or whatever. It's a public service, and part of that public service has got to be to getting young people in there using it rather than on street corners, where we have the potential for them to be doing the wrong things.
Any other councillors have any questions for Councillor Blake? Councillor Morris?
Thank you. So the partnership with Onside would have required existing council spend on youth services to be diverted. So does the cancellation of the partnership now indicate that existing youth services funded by the council are set to be protected? And what is the time frame for producing the broader youth strategy? You mentioned the 3 strategies earlier, but also so those 3 strategies, and also how the money that was going to go into Onside, how that will be spent on youth services in the borough. Thank you.
Councillor Blake.
Officers will correct me if I've got this interpretation wrong. Is it Charlotte here? Yeah, shall I let you take that one in terms of the spend, just to clarify on that, to make sure you get the details right.
So the proposal was that the money would be found across children's services, not specifically youth services. So your question, suggests that it would have been youth services provision, so that isn't the case. And we've also got the manifesto commitment on investment in youth provision, which is outlined in the report.
Yes, I think just to clarify that that money that was earmarked for on-side would have come from other budgets across children's. You know, clearly our commitment, we're very clear in terms of our manifesto commitment. We want to preserve the youth service that we've got, which has been cut by, I think, 75% over the duration of the last 8 years. We're building from, you know, a far weaker base than we'd like. But we're absolutely committed to that, and we're also committed to trying to find some extra resources next year. We are waiting for our bid from the Mayor's Fund, which I think we'll have some news on in the coming weeks. And in terms of the time frame for those 3 strategies, I've made it quite clear to officers I expect those 3 strategies to go to Cabinet as a group, not individually. And they're producing a timeline for that, and part of that timeline has to include some public consultation, which I will lead on. Thank you.
Sorry about that. The Chief Executive is bringing spiders into the room without permission, it has to be said. Okay, thank you very much for that. Can we turn to pages 36? Of our pack, and are we able to agree those recommendations? Can we agree that? Thank you very much. Moving on, item number 11. It is it's the creation of a single homelessness hub. Pages 41 to 68 on your pack. Can we just? I'm asking Councillor Ahmed to introduce the report, and also for Councillor Ibrahim to add comments to it subsequently. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you very much. So I'm very pleased to be introducing this report, which, as you've already said, is a joint endeavour between health and housing. So this report recommends the creation of a single homelessness hub. And just in terms of rough sleepers and single homeless people, just some quick comments, but they do experience some of the worst outcomes of all of our residents and are more likely to be unemployed, unhealthy, unsafe and at risk of an early death. And by creating a safe and, quite importantly, a holistic environment, we hope to try and mitigate against that. So what Cabinet is being asked for is to approve specifically a lease arrangement in respect of 332 High Road, Tottenham, which will create the single homelessness hub, which will provide both advice, support and info on a range of health, well-being and housing services and dedicated accommodation units for single homelessness people and rough sleepers. And if you look specifically at 3.1 to 3.6, these are the specific recommendations there. But as I say, what's quite important here, and I know Councillor Ibrahim will come in with some comments as well, is that this is a joint endeavour and it's placing the health needs of these individuals at the core of this service.
So, not much more to add other than that. I think that this is a really good cross-portfolio initiative. It deals with the multiple kind of dynamics of how people find themselves in this situation. Obviously, single homelessness is a big issue in this borough. You know, yesterday there was a fantastic initiative in Finsbury Park to deal with some of the multiple issues that have been going on. I was very glad to see that our officers were there with officers from Islington and Hackney, and just that this is another part of that kind of joint strategic approach, and would hope that the Cabinet will support it.
Okay, councillors, thank you very much for that. Can I ask if there's any other councillor has any questions for this? Councillor Morris.
Thank you. Just one question. There's a reference to 23 people in paragraph 1.2 and 4.1. Is this the maximum number of people that the council expects the single homelessness hub to handle at any one time? And if so, how does that square with paragraph 6.6, which states that the property comprises 9 flats with 21 rooms in total? Where would the remaining 2 residents be accommodated?
Apologies, I was just getting clarification. So that's the maximum for the housing unit, but not for the hub. So the hub is for the information, advice, guidance. But in terms of the actual units, that's the maximum units that will be available for those who are accessing it in crisis. So just 21. The units there, because it's an assessment centre. So the idea is that then they're moved on from there. But the hub itself will obviously be able to. There'll be more, obviously, as many people there. Okay, 21, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Right, comrades, sorry. We are comrades, but we might be sitting in a different room. Cabinet colleagues. Right, pages 42 and 43. There are recommendations at 3.1 to 3.6. Can we agree those, please? Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Item number 13. Haringey Library refurbishment and essential maintenance. This is a report. This is on pages 237 to 244 of your pack. This is a report introduced by Councillor Brabazon. Councillor Brabazon. Two three seven.
I think this is a really positive report and a really positive development, focusing on one of our few remaining listed civic buildings in the west of the borough. Haringey Library is the main central library, as we know, for the west part of the borough, as in Crouch End. And this report is seeking additional money, seeking your approval to via 2.26 million over a 2-year period in order to complete the capital refurbishment of the library. So, the library is grade 2. It's council owned and is an important civic building. It is much loved by people everywhere and is a really very interesting, I think it's 60s design. The additional capital investment is vital in ensuring the building is in sound structural condition, and the capital funds are going to complement the investment in the internal refurbishment, which is part of the broader capital programme for the libraries referenced in this report, which will result in all the libraries across the borough having a bit of a makeover. The whole project should result in a revived library inside and out. Many of the items in the library are listed, in case colleagues didn't know this. The shelving is listed, the exhibition gallery, and some of the desks and tables in the reference library are listed, which I didn't know, so I went round there and I can see why they are. It is very retro, and I'm sure a lot of people like it for that purpose. It also houses an amazing collection of musical scores, which are used by orchestras all over the country. An absolutely extraordinary collection, and I think we should be very proud that Haringey Library does contain that. So, renovation of the library assures its status as a civic institution, and colleagues will know that I'm rather keen on the notion of civic institutions and retaining those. And it should be complemented by the new arts centre, which is being developed round the corner at the town hall. So I'm asking you to agree the environment of the 2.266 million, which comes from the corporate landlord and carbon management budgets. It does not come from the library's budget, and I want to reassure any library campaigners who may be here or who are friends of the libraries that this is additional funding which complements the capital funding available for all the libraries in the borough. So I hope you'll all approve it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Brabazon. Cabinet, any Cabinet colleagues have any questions for Councillor Brabazon? Okay, other councillors? Councillor Culverwell, please.
A question, Councillor Brabazon. As you're aware, or I hope you are, Stroud Green Library has a flat. And I don't know, that flat which is empty and can be utilized for income, is there any, have they put aside any finance to do it up or put in? And also the library needs a lift.
In the report, the funding allocations for the other libraries is set out. There's £87,000 set aside for Stroud Green and Haringey Library. I have visited and I know that the flat is upstairs, and we are having discussions about how that can best be utilised. There is a suggestion it could possibly be used for residential. There are other ideas around looking at those rooms for possible developments for use by artists or writers. And we have met with the friends of Stroud Green Library who are very keen on that idea. It even has a loft, so we've got another floor. And I think we are thinking about how libraries and some of the assets, which may have been slightly hidden, can be utilised to extend their role as serious cultural facilities, really important cultural facilities in the borough, at the heart of that development. So the answer is we are very keen, and obviously to get up those, I think you would need a lift, yes. But we're working with the Friends of the Library, so all good.
Can I invite you to a Friends of the Library meeting this Friday at 3 o'clock?
You could invite me, but I won't be able to come because I'm going to Oxford for a 50th reunion of my college.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other councillors? Councillor Morris.
Thank you. Three questions. First one is, given the discovery that Hornsey Library required more than £2 million of extra work above that envisaged in the programme budget, what has been done to consider whether other libraries may require similar investments and how this could be absorbed in the budget? The second question is, why will any of the allocated funds be spent improving the Zen garden within the library so as to make it an attractive modern garden space for library users? And the third question is, similar question, have any of the proposed 3.3 million funds been allocated to improve the public realm outside the library, such as the fountain, public toilets to the west of the borough, west of the library, and the garden space and trees located at the library entrance? Thank you.
As I said, there's been a capital allocation for the libraries with £1 million for Hornsey's internal modifications, which does take account of the fact that so much stuff is listed. I cannot tell you off the top of my head whether that would include the Zen garden, but I think the drawings, and I might have to ask one of the officers if they could respond to that. If not, I'll get back to you on that. The other libraries, Wood Green has got 450,000 allocated for improvements, and we are seriously discussing how that links in with the customer service centre and so on, and I'm looking at Richard, he might be able to respond in more detail. The other renovations, there's money for IT, so that is part of the infrastructure, and we are consulting with the library groups about what they see the money being spent on in terms of improvements, and it is a capital budget for capital improvements. So that's where that is. Public realm, I'm not sure it does include the fountain. but it would be very good if we could find money to improve the fountain. Perhaps we could look at some of the Section 106 from Hornsey Town Hall.
Councillor, if I may, my understanding is that there will be some improvement to some of the public realm immediately outside of the building. I'm happy to take you through the drawings of that and exactly what would happen if you'd like. But most of the money is to the fabric of the building to maintain its use without having to close at any time through boiler maintenance or anything like that. So that's where the majority of the money is going. But inevitably some of that will cover some of the public realm space outside. But we can take you through the drawings and exactly what that is.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for that discussion, colleagues. Can we turn to page 238 of the report? Are we okay to agree that? Agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much. Next up is agenda item number 14, the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, RIPA 2000. The Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000 provides a statutory framework for public authority to use covert investigatory techniques such as surveillance where necessary and proportionate for the purposes of preventing or detecting crime. As the report on page 245 sets out, the Council uses these powers infrequently. In fact, in the past 4 years, we've used them twice. However, should the opportunity come where we need to use these powers to help the police investigate crime or to investigate fraud from the Council, then we need to update and agree the policy annually. The change to the policy contained in this report and the policy itself is on page 251 of your pack. These changes correspond with guidelines and guidance issued by the Home Office and the Office of the Surveillance Commission. So, all we're doing is updating our policy. And in page 247, it points out that we've only used it twice in the past 4 years. However, I have to say that I've been lobbied recently to see whether we could use these powers to capture evidence of serious antisocial behaviour, specifically allegations of drug dealing within our council housing blocks. So that's one of the things that I've been lobbied for recently, but we're not there yet. However, first and foremost, can I ask whether any council colleagues, cabinet colleagues, have any questions on this report? Can I ask whether any other councillors have any questions on this report? Okay, that having been said, no. Can I ask if we turn to page 245? Recommendations are 3.1, 3.2. Can I ask that we agree them? Can we agree them? Lovely, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, item 15, water, wastewater and ancillary services. I'd like Councillor Tucker. Councillor Tucker, if you could move and introduce your report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, as you may have guessed, this relates to our supply of water and also disposing of wastewater, sewerage. As the ideology of increasing privatisation and marketisation moves on, successive governments have resorted to ever more extreme measures of trying to create markets and create some kind of competition, even in industries which are natural monopolies, one of which obviously is the water industry. Under the recent Lib Dem Tory coalition and more recently under the current Tory government, in 2014-2017, legislation was passed and has now been implemented to increasingly deregulate water and sewerage. As a result of which, our previous water supplier, Thames Water, exited the retail market, handed over to another supplier called Castle Water, who have up to now been still providing water to the council. I don't think anyone's noticed the actual chemical composition of the water changing. It still falls from the same sky, goes into the same reservoirs, comes out the same pipes, but there's been a fanfare of delight about the fact that there's now a competitive arrangement. Fortunately, the London public sector has seen sense and has got together. So that is the local authorities, fire services, police, TfL and the NHS through an organisation called the London Energy Project, and have basically made an arrangement to purchase water, sewerage and ancillary services from a single supplier, and the successful supplier is Anglian Water. So we will be moving to a contract with Anglian Water. It's one that our officers believe, and have every confidence, is one that provides the best quality and the best value for money. It's a 2-year contract with an opportunity to extend it for a further 2 years. It's worth to the council, the value of the water and sewage that we'll be buying is going to be around £350,000 a year. It also includes local schools, whose services will come to about £300,000 a year, and there is an additional option to purchase extra services to reduce water consumption, etc., to the tune of £500,000, which we may or may not be using. So this is the sensible thing to do in this rather ridiculous situation, and so I commend this proposal to you, colleagues.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Tucker. Councillor Brabazon.
I'd like you to tell us a bit more about this relationship with the schools. I know there's been significant problems with Castle Water at the school where I'm Chair of Governors, so I'm particularly interested to read this, and I would like to know how this is going to be managed so that the schools are not taken advantage of.
Yes, Councillor Brabazon, I can confirm it's in the report. There have been considerable problems reported by the schools, and we're hoping that this is a way forward to address those. I don't know if any of my officer colleagues present would be able to give any additional detail about the situation with the schools.
Not in any detail here, but I can look into that and get something back to you if it's an issue of particular concern.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much for that. Any other councillors that have any questions to ask on this report? Councillor Calverwell.
I'm particularly interested in what you said of the schools and the overflow of the sewerage, and what environmental impact has that on, and what they take into mitigate any issues on it.
Yeah, sorry. Councillor Tucker.
Thanks. I think we may have given a mistaken impression. Hopefully there hasn't been any overflow of the sewerage. The issue that the schools have faced have been about the billing arrangements, and therefore them building up a backlog of debt because they weren't properly billed for the water, leading to uncertainty in the financial arrangements of the schools. So it's not an overflow of actual physical water or sewerage. It's more of a kind of overflow in people's bank accounts, in organisational bank accounts, and difficulty in actually controlling and tracking the flows of money. Hopefully that reassures you a bit.
Okay,
Can I talk? Actually, I'm talking about a live situation right now.
Can I suggest that there is a live situation where there is an issue? Can I suggest that we get you a report for that, and we'll take that offline from this meeting? Okay.
Councillor Culverwell, just to confirm that I've asked the Assistant Director for Schools and Learning, who isn't here tonight, to make sure that the work is done as planned in October half-term. So it's an unacceptable situation that's been going on with that school. We've raised it with Thames Water on a number of occasions, and they're due to complete the work in October half-term because it can't be done while the school is working as a school and while children are on site. So I've asked our officers to make sure, do everything they can, that the work takes place when it should. All right?
Okay, you
I'm sorry, I just want to answer that quickly. This is very quick.
No, I'm sorry. You'll get a written response from that offline from this meeting, and it is a live issue, and as the Cabinet member has said, we are dealing with it. Okay. The recommendations are on page 231. Recommendations are 3.1 and 3.2. Can I ask that we can agree those? Can we agree those? Lovely. Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 16. Woodside Avenue, pages 277 to 280 of our pack today. Please can the meeting note this report is exempt information to be considered in the private part of this meeting. Therefore, we will consider the recommendations as set out in sections 3.1 to 3.5, subject to considering the exempt information at item 18. Okay, Councillor Ibrahim, please can you introduce your report?
So this report is in relation to two properties at Woodside Avenue in Muswell Hill. So it's part of some feasibility and site investigation work around the potential development at the Crownwood site in Muswell Hill. So acquiring the properties will enable the council to continue with its housing, with plans for a housing scheme there, which will deliver new social rented housing, most importantly in the west of the borough. So we've got currently a severe shortage of social rented homes in the borough, and the purchase of these two homes will contribute to us meeting those objectives.
Okay. Do any Cabinet colleagues have any questions for Councillor Ibrahim? Okay. Any other councillors have any questions for Councillor Ibrahim? Okay. Well, as I've said, what we're going to do is we'll return to the recommendations, item 21, once we get into the exempt part of the meeting. Okay. Next. It says minutes of other bodies. There are no minutes of any other bodies because nothing meets in August except us. All right, item 18, significant delegated actions. Councillor Brabazon.
I'd just like to ask some clarification, please, on the delegated decision related to the refurbishment of Cumberland Road, where it says an increase in purchase orders to cover additional costs of £85,000. Is that related to the young people's provision or the other part of the building? I'd just like some clarification, please. Okay,
I'm just reminded of the Constitution and the Standing Orders, which is that these items are items for noting. However, since you've raised it, I will ensure that there's a written response to you, but we'll take it offline from this meeting. Okay. Can we just note the delegated actions on 281 to 288? Is that okay? Noted. Lovely. Thank you very much. There are no new items of urgent business. So, comrades, can I ask for the exclusion of the press and the public so that we can go into session to discuss the exempt items, please?